Welcome to the exciting rebirth of Superstar, featuring choose your membership rate as low as just $3 a month. At Superstar, you get expanded, exclusive video scopes each and every week, unlimited access to special horoscopes, class passes for Synchronicity University, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space. I look forward to meeting you there. Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to your horoscope for the week of October 24, 2021. I am your astrologer, Nadiya Shah. Thank you for being here. It is a remarkable astrological week, without a doubt. There are massive moves happening now. The very big news this week has to do with Mars moving into the sign of Scorpio at the end of the week. Now, I do want to explore some of that symbolism with you, but I also want to spend some time this week talking about some after effects, afterthoughts of the great conjunction, or one of the great conjunctions that took place. In this case specifically, I'm talking about the conjunction of Pluto and Saturn that took place in January of 2020. That signaled a massive shift for us here. And I wanted to talk about that, especially in the context of the fact that Mars is now moving into its home sign of Scorpio. This is where Mars is the traditional ruler, the ancient ruling planet of Scorpio. Of course, in modern astrology, we take Pluto into account as well as co-ruler of the sign of Scorpio. But when I consider the energy of Scorpio itself, this very transformative, profound time, normally, when we think about Scorpion energy and how it is in modern astrology connected to the eighth house in astrology, these are symbols of profound change, profound truth. And we also look at this energy when we consider resources available to us, like our relationship to financial institutions, for example. But I was thinking about this energy with a little bit more depth and all the different things that it can represent beyond just what is obvious and on the surface. And so when we look at the zodiac, right, there is a perfect order to it. And this zodiac that we use has very ancient roots. I mean, when we go to some of the earliest documents known to human history, when we go to cave drawings even, we can see human beings, early human beings, documenting what they are witnessing in the sky and striving to make sense of it, correlating it to events on Earth. But the way that we understand astrology today is very much rooted in a text called Tetrabiblos and the work of Hellenistic astrologers going back about 2,000 years. And there have been many important shifts in astrology, many important moves that have changed its direction at times and have led us to the place that we are today with a modern and more psychological, even more spiritual understanding of how it is that we have this relationship to the sky. And so this in and of itself can be very powerful to understand. The signs, of course, are in perfect order. They have been laid out to us for millennia. And it is these signs that represent a different understanding of the human experience. And so in the sign of Aries that I spoke about last week, because we had the full moon in Aries, that is the first breath. That is the interaction with the energy of life itself. Then we get to the energy of Taurus and we start to look at what we value. We start to look at worth. And so there's a sense here of starting to discern, to place judgment. We get to the energy of Gemini and we start to look at mind and the development of mind and figuring out what it is that we uniquely have to say, trusting the moment, being spontaneous and trusting synchronicity. We get to Cancer, and that is where we start to look at the foundations of our life, our ancestors, and what perhaps we owe them, and what we're going to carry forward in this life. We get to the 5th house, and this is where the energy starts to rise in the zodiacal sky. And this is where we start to look at heart. We look at what it is that we believe about ourselves in terms of what we can feel good about, what it is within us that is worthy of shining and being seen, and where it is that we can cultivate meaningful and authentic joy. Then we get to the energy of Virgo in the 6th house, and that is where we start looking at our daily life. Are we actually living what it is that we know in our heart to be true? We get to the energy of Libra and the 7th house, and that is where we start to share. We look at partnerships. We look at how much we gain when it is that we are willing to consider life from another's perspective. And then we get to the energy of Scorpio and the energy of 8th house. And this is where we go on a very deep dive. We start to go within in a more profound way. And whether we do that in our own journey, or whether it is that we do that through specific behaviors or through vulnerability with another, this is where we start to explore what is, in some ways, taboo. Yes, a very surface understanding of this energy is that it has to do with psychology and transformation and regeneration. So yes, it can be a very powerful regenerative energy, which is beautiful. It is the energy of the life, death, rebirth cycle, with the emphasis on rebirth. And perhaps sometimes we place too much emphasis on the rebirth without realizing that actually the best rebirth is the one that we earn. It was earlier this week that I was attending the class by Rachel Schwartz that I've been telling you about. Her class on Kabbalah astrology is incredible. I've been enjoying it so much. To shout out to Rachel there. She really is one of the best out there where it comes to being an astrology teacher. But it was this last class that she was talking about abundance and what we can understand about that from a Kabbalistic perspective. And she spoke about how we as human beings have an innate desire to feel like we have earned what it is that we have. And earned our, whether it's our place in the community, our place in the world, to earn the blessings in our lives, to earn the prosperity in our lives. It is by feeling as if we've earned it that we are able to accept it that much more. And of course, this class went on for over an hour and a half. It was very nuanced and in-depth and profound. But this was one of the takeaways here. And I thought about this in the context of the energy coming up this week. What does it mean to earn our blessings? What does that work actually look like? And that may be part of the deep dive now, that depth of perception that we are going to be encouraged to find. This part of the sky, yes, connects us to resources that could be available to us, but some of the most important resources we have are emotional and are spiritual. And sometimes the work to earn whatever blessings there are there for us isn't necessarily direct. It isn't necessarily a give and take. It isn't always obvious how working on your psychological awareness is part of what's going to help you to cultivate greater practical prosperity. It isn't always obvious how focusing on where it is that you could become more conscious, align with higher spiritual principles to do the work that change requires, so that our alignment with those principles aren't just a concept, aren't something that we're telling ourselves, but something we know to be true within, to the depths of our being, that we feel it that closely, that it becomes an intuitive response. Well, the work that takes, it doesn't always on the surface correlate to us to how it is that work could actually free us up to have more meaningful connections with other people, more meaningful relationships. Another thing that Rachel shared was that when it is that you are honoring your spiritual direction, right? When it is that you're working on yourself spiritually, you're striving to be conscious and you're doing the work that spiritual evolution requires. Now, I'm paraphrasing here. I'm using my own language to talk about some of the ideas, some of the takeaways I had from her class. It isn't always obvious on the surface how that can be part of what helps you to cultivate greater practical prosperity in your life, greater work-related opportunities in your life. It is a remarkable thing how doing our own work frees us to give, yes, but also to receive in all kinds of ways that are not necessarily a direct give and take. The connection doesn't appear very obvious on the surface, but there is a depth of interaction constantly playing out in life. There is a depth of complexity constantly playing out that asks us to get more honest with ourselves, and in so doing, in our ability to be honest with ourselves, in our ability to do the spiritual work, part of that work means trust. Trust that what it is we need will be provided for. Trust that if we're doing our part, the universe will respond and ensure that we are okay. Now, what does it mean to be okay? That's the thing with Scorpio energy, and that brings me back to Scorpio energy. What does it mean to be okay? Because the energy of Scorpio understands that life can sometimes, in its complexity and in its nuance, can be painful. And sometimes that pain is related to external events that don't seem fair. But sometimes it is the pain that we may inflict on ourselves, perhaps by being obsessive in a particular situation, or being overly concerned with outcomes that we have no power over. There is something very liberating about recognizing where you have power and where you don't, and surrendering what you don't have power over. Focusing instead on how it is you can empower yourself, and finding confidence in meaningful faith. Faith in yourself, faith in your future. And this isn't a faith that's about just connecting to the clouds. That's a beautiful thing, and sometimes we need that. And we may feel some of that in the earlier part of the week, thanks to Venus square Neptune, though I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But as high as we go is as low as we can go. And as much as we may want to connect to that higher, more lofty sense, there is really no escape from our more profound spiritual lessons, our path to our authenticity, because those lessons will always appear again and again. In different form, perhaps, in different people, perhaps, but again and again it will show up. The thing to remember about Scorpio energy is that it invites us to go in deep. It invites us to go to the places within ourselves that maybe we haven't been willing to before. And I would also add, wherever Scorpio is in your chart, for those of you who are students of astrology, look at what house Scorpio falls in. What that means is, and just a little bit of a mini lesson to further some of the mini lessons in this video, if you look at your chart and you look at the energy of Scorpio, you'll find it, and chances are there's a house cusp that falls in the sign of Scorpio. That area of life that that house represents is an area of life that is going to go through profound change and is going to ask for your depth of honesty and authenticity repeatedly at key moments in life. It is an area of life that is going to invite you to dig very deep, even when it's hard to be honest about yourself and what you feel and what you want, no matter the consequences at times. And I think that's why this part of the sky is also associated with things like what is taboo to us, what we don't want to sometimes admit is a part of us, or where it is that we desire to know those things that have been forbidden to us, where it is perhaps that our own feelings can feel intense or obsessive or complex, even if it's uncomfortable. And this part of the sky also speaks to trust issues that could be there, the wounding that we consciously hold, and what it is we do to resolve it. And as part of the mystery, right, it is remarkable how many different ways in which human beings will constantly seek resolution, whether it is through repetition of past patterns, repetition of what they saw adults around them do as children, We get the opportunity in this life to reach a level of self-honesty. And what's the point of self-honesty is to choose differently, to ask ourselves if we like what we're feeling or we like the outcome. And if we don't, to choose differently. But if we like the outcome, to embrace it, to not be afraid of the truth that we find as well. And so with Mars moving into the sign of Scorpio, and I promise I am going to come back and talk about the other signs, okay? So don't worry about that. If you're like, wait, Nadiya, talk about my sign too. I will in just a second. But with Scorpio energy and with Mars moving into the sign of Scorpio, it's as if in an instant, many of us wake up in new ways. We're looking at a particular area of life and we're wanting to get to some truth, some understanding. We're wanting to gain power, gain an advantage. This is a sign ruled by Mars after all. Now, Mars in its home sign of Scorpio, well, think about it. When you're home, ideally when you're home, you feel really comfortable, right? You relax a little bit more. You feel like you know the terrain. You're able to bring forward different parts of yourself that much more easily, and possibly parts of yourself that feel more natural as well. So Mars in the sign of Scorpio does just this. It is able to allow its energy to flow, but it's able to direct its energy with precision as well. It's able to have a clarity and understanding as to what is worth focusing on and what isn't. And in at least one area of life, we are going to be invited to make that choice. We're going to be invited to be honest with ourselves. What are we focusing on? Where are we wasting our time? What's no longer worth focusing on? For some, this energy might make us a little bit more obsessive before we find a turning point, but I actually think that's not the likely scenario. And that is because of what happens just before Mars enters the sign of Scorpio. And that is the sun in the sign of Scorpio is going to speak with Saturn in a conversation of tension. When the sun squares Saturn, as it does about twice a year, when this happens, it represents a reality check moment, a moment of honesty. It represents a realization of where it is that maybe we can't get what we want. That really is okay. Sometimes it's okay. Now, sometimes by admitting that we can't get what we want, it strengthens our resolve to know that just because we can't have it right now doesn't mean we can't have it in the fullness of time. But we may have to delay gratification before it is that we can have what it is that we desire. But this energy also invites us to reach a turning point to say, is it worth the sacrifice or not? And if it's not, to be willing to go in a different direction. That's part of transformation as well. Now, even though the sun squares Saturn twice a year, for the sun to be in the sign of Scorpio and Saturn to be in the sign of Aquarius while they're squaring each other, that is a more rare phenomenon. That doesn't happen as often. And so this area of life now that is getting a reality check for us is ultimately inviting us to get more deeply honest. What is real for us? Where is it that we're sacrificing too much? And where is it, no matter what others may say, no matter what the nuances are, no matter what judgments may be, where is it that we desire to go to unknown places within ourselves? What is it that we have said to ourselves is forbidden or is taboo? But now we're realizing that doesn't really work for us anymore. Being honest with ourselves, taking ownership, that can be a type of taboo to a lot of people and situations and social locations out there. There are places and spaces in which everybody wants to be right. But of course, that doesn't work when meaningful intimacy is involved. Because this part of the sky has to do with vulnerability as well, even if we can't show that vulnerability in all circumstances. We are invited to be vulnerable to ourselves. And that means honesty, even when it's hard. And so after we found the depths of ourselves, we've met that part of ourselves that maybe we don't always want to acknowledge is there. We come out on the other side. With every descent, is an ascent. When you look at mythology, as Joseph Campbell said, whenever it is that you see a death, it means that there's going to be a rebirth. You can just wait for that, count on that. And so this is where, after we have descended, we start to ascent. And we go into the energy of Sagittarius, or the 9th house. And this is where we meet the world. We meet the galaxy. We realize that we've looked within ourselves. And on the other side of it is a commonality that we can see in others. When we're able to face the things that we are deeply afraid of, where it is that it's hard to trust, and we find self-trust on the other side of it, well, that is where we're able to trust others that much more openly. We're able to trust the world. In the energy of Capricorn and the 10th house, this is where we reach the pinnacle of the zodiac, and this is where we receive recognition, or we do something in a larger sense that we can feel good about. It's what we want to be known for, the legacy that we work towards creating and aligning with our understanding of a higher, more loving vision for our life. We get to Aquarius and the 11th house, and this is also called a second childhood because this also represents the energy of retirement in one understanding, which is basically this idea that we find a newfound freedom. We did what it was that we set out to do, or we make peace with what it is that was not for us to do, and now we are free. We're free to enjoy the company of others, to find friends wherever we go. And then we go to the 12th house in Pisces, and this is where we find communion. We realize that it isn't that we are part of the collective, but that we are each other, that we are one. And this is also where we find bliss, genuine spiritual bliss that comes from plugging into source. So that's looking at all the signs. Of course, for this week, it is that Scorpion energy that is so strong, especially in the later part of the week as we move towards the end of the week. Once Mars moves into Scorpio, I feel like that reality check that the Sun square Saturn represents, it's like in an instant, everything looks different. In an instant, we have a realization that shifts things for us. And even with the frustration of realizing where we don't have power, even where we really wanted to have power, but we don't, we're able to find peace within. We're able to find a depth of understanding. We're able to then, on the other side of it, be energized by what it is we do control. And we're able to take ownership for all of our feelings. So the other area of the sky that's very lit up this week is the energy of Sagittarius as well, thanks to Venus. On Tuesday, Venus will speak with Neptune in a conversation of tension before moving on Thursday to speak with Jupiter in a harmonious conversation. Now, I find this journey quite intriguing, actually, because the energy of Venus and Neptune, I touched on it earlier in the video, like basically that is being so up in the clouds. It is not necessarily seeing things accurately, and that can go to extremes. That can be seeing things much more pessimistically than they actually are, but also seeing things way more idealistically than is reasonable in a given moment. Regardless, understand that especially where it comes to matters of love or money, which is part of what Venus represents, but Venus in the energy of Sagittarius really can go overboard. It can really be the energy of the party. Well, in a party setting, we may really end up going overboard. So just be mindful of that. If you are someone who likes to let loose and have fun, and whether that involves alcohol or substances or not, regardless, just know that this is energy that can have you getting carried away. I speak at times of a big realization I had so many years ago now. It's amazing, right? You blink and a life has gone by. You blink and decades have gone by. But if we strive to stay conscious, we pick up some wisdom along the way, or we pick up experiences that we can choose to translate into wisdom through the choices that we make. And so I remember having the realization that for every high, there is a low. And the realization that what people feel, like if I go to a club and everyone's drinking and I'm not drinking, It's like tuning into a radio station. I can choose to go into that energy of the high that the people around me are feeling, and I'll enjoy myself to the maximum. But then the next day, I will also feel a low. I have had the experience of being hungover the next day without drinking anything, without any substances. I have felt hungover emotionally because of where I went the night before emotionally. For every high, there is a low. And I think that's what Venus square Neptune is part of helping us to understand. And so where is it that we might catch ourselves going too high, going too low? Well, thankfully it is a square after all. So we will be able to have that moment of being honest with ourselves, of checking in with ourselves. But it is as we navigate to Venus sextile Jupiter that we're able to tap into wisdom. This is where we have a greater depth of understanding as to what joys are more meaningful, what adventures are worth taking on, and we gain a higher perspective, perhaps even an intellectual perspective. The energy here is lofty. It is wanting to be free. It is wanting to be itself. And one of the more powerful forms of freedom is peace, being at peace with yourself, being at peace with your choices. It is a very powerful type of freedom. And choosing not to buy into, get caught up in the illusions of others, as alluring as that might be, or as much as our own fantasies might feel so alluring that we want to go there, we want to live in that fantastical place of wishes and hopes and desires and really fantasy. That has its place. Fantasy can be channeled towards creating a life and a reality that we love. And it is part of the human experience. Our imagination is a great gift. But when it is that we recognize that we're using our imagination in a way that doesn't have us feeling very good, that takes us away from our peace, and instead choose to actively align with what it is that's going to help us to feel more peaceful, to feel more free of entanglements or of other illusions that we don't need to participate in, well, that is when we find true empowerment, empowerment of mind, empowerment of spirit. And that is when we redefine what joy is, what pleasure is, what love is as well, especially when it is that we understand to prioritize our peace is a powerful way to love ourselves. Now, I do want to share some things, some reflections that I've been having about the Pluto-Saturn conjunction that took place back in January of 2020. And this was energy that sort of kicked off this new phase, if you will. It was a seed moment. It was a beginning. But it was a beginning that ultimately is designed to help us all to become more authentic, to become more ourselves. I have correlated this conjunction with the last time that this conjunction happened in the energy of Capricorn, and that was the Protestant Reformation. And the Protestant Reformation represented a time when our relationship to the divine changed. That was the beginning. It was the beginning of our recognition that we could come to the divine as we are. We could interpret what is understood as the word or words of divine wisdom and decide for ourselves what it means without needing intermediaries. And this was a powerful shift that occurred because it shifted power itself. It took power out of a hierarchy and instead began to give power to the individual. And I believe that it is this phenomenon that took place 500 years ago, the last time that Saturn and Pluto were conjunct in Capricorn, that set the seed for the world that we have today. The world we live in today, the Western mind is very individual-centric. The individual is the nucleus of society. Whether it is an understanding of individual rights, individual freedoms, These concepts, these understandings were not something that humanity was necessarily open to. Certainly not the way it is today. But it is this moment, this conjunction that happened 500 years ago that set the seed. And now it was at the beginning of 2020 that we set another seed, a brand new chapter, our redefining of power itself and who has it. Our redefining of what it means to be human and what role we're going to play in society or with each other in a larger context. And it is and goes to that very understanding of our relationship to the divine itself shifting. But that can sound very lofty, right? That can sound a little conceptual and philosophical. What does this actually look like? What does it actually look like to get honest with ourselves about what power structures or hierarchies we have bought into that aren't serving us anymore? Well, I'll tell you, something I've observed that I found quite interesting. A lot of us, with this pandemic, all last year and into this year as well, there is a phenomenon that has been taking place right now. I know it's been happening in Canada, certainly, and in the US as well. And that is that now that people are returning to their lives as they were before, right? Returning to their workplaces and such, something's changed. Something's different. I was even saying it back then. I thought that we will find a time when we return, and for some people, that return will remind them how wonderful it is. The things that we did unconsciously, that we took for granted, we are filled with gratitude for them. That we didn't realize how valuable it was to us to have those connections with each other, to do the work that we did. But also, a lot of people are going to return and realize that this just doesn't fit anymore. And so the phenomenon that's taking place now is that more people are recognizing that they want to do work, they want to do something that feels meaningful to them. And they want to feel a sense of prosperity in the process. And they want to figure out ways to do it that feel right to them, to find balance. It is that work-life balance. And it's interesting that we contrast that. We put life in one section, we put work in another, and we strive to find balance. We strive to find a middle ground instead of understanding that it can be a holistic whole. But more people are coming to understand that it is holistic, meaning that work is a part of our life. And work can be an expression of life, an expression of love. And whereas perhaps before, when we were just operating, moving through our lives, not necessarily thinking about it at all times, we didn't realize how much we were giving, how much we were getting, and where it was that we were giving too much or participating in dynamics or situations that weren't really affirming of the things that we value within ourselves. And I think a part of this is that very quickly with the pandemic, really what happened is we became immersed in the truth of our lives, immersed in the truth of what we want, of our hopes, of our dreams. And in this immersion, changes came. And so it's interesting because I saw an interview with Chris Rock, and he was making a joke that, with the pandemic, he knows so many people that have broken up with the people that they were with for years, or marriages have broken up. And I thought that was interesting because, yes, that is one phenomenon. I've certainly been seeing that as well. People ending relationships because they no longer had the distractions where they could distract themselves from what wasn't working in the relationship. They had to face it. And in facing it, they made a shift. But I've also seen a lot of people in their immersion go in different directions. Lots of people, they were newly dating and they started to shack up. Lots of people I know actually met people that they didn't even know that well, but decided to get married. The truth of what they wanted was love, right? They wanted genuine companionship and sharing. And so they found immersion in that. I know quite a few people who had babies 9 months after the pandemic began. I know a few people like that. And so whatever it is for you, of course, your answers are going to be uniquely your own, but there's something honest there. I have been calling the pandemic, and especially last year, I called it the Great Pause. And sure, that's a part of it, but I would update that now. And I would say possibly it wasn't the Great Pause, it was the Great Immersion. The immersion of what we really feel, the truth of what we really feel about these different areas of life. I know a couple of people who've said that the work-life balance they need is realizing that they have a whole lot more gratitude for the teachers of their children in their lives, and how much they appreciated that time away. That was part of that balance they needed. And of course, many others have said that they want to be present for their families, or maybe for themselves, for their future, for their dreams. Now, again, your answers are going to be uniquely your own, but I wanted to bring this up because a big part of what has defined the pandemic so far has to do with Saturn and Aquarius. And it was just as Saturn entered Aquarius that the world went into lockdown. And then it was as Saturn met Mars in the sign of Aquarius at the very end of March and beginning of April of 2020, that in an instant it felt like the world had social restrictions, social distancing. These became the key words. But this energy can also feel frustrating as well. That's the thing with Saturn. Saturn asks us to be responsible, but what that means and responsible to whom, well, that's highly individual in the sign of Aquarius. That can mean different things to different people. And so now we still have Saturn in Aquarius, but more importantly, Saturn right now is direct, newly direct, right? Went direct the 10th of October. And as Saturn now is moving forward, and as Uranus is going retrograde, these planets are slowly going to move more and more into alignment. And this, to me, represents an important turning point. This aspect is going to be exact right around Christmas Eve. And it is going to be just a couple days later that Jupiter is going to leave Aquarius. And what that means is at the last square, Jupiter will be in anaretic degree, will be at a concentration point in the energy of Aquarius. We have this big turning point coming for us right around the corner. Before we get there, there's a whole lot going to happen. There's a whole lot to look forward to, right? Not only do we have Mars stepping into Scorpio this week, which is huge, because Mars stepping into Scorpio is going to square Saturn. Not right away. I'll be here to talk about it every step of the way, but in the weeks ahead, we're going to find that square starts to happen with Saturn, with Jupiter. And so some of the remnants of reminders of restriction may show up for us. But I think we'll start to sense it. We'll start to sense that we're moving in that direction just as Mars moves into Scorpio. But all of us right now in this time of immersion, right? The great immersion, as I'm now calling it. This Saturn-Uranus square that's been ongoing this year is an important part of the immersion. It's an important part of coming out of the immersion, but more importantly, making sense of the immersion, realizing that perhaps it was never a pause. It was always a chance to sit in our truth, even when it's hard. And the truth of what we feel, the truth of what we're really wanting, the truth of why it is that we have the lives we do, why we've made the choices we have, why we've manifested what we have, and what's working for us and what no longer is. This is about integrating the understandings into self and having it count for something, not having it be just something that came and went, but rather being changed for the better. And I think a lot of us are already feeling this energy. It's not easy to change careers or to look for other work, but this is a phenomenon that's taking place right now, where a lot of people are saying that They want to have their work life be more rewarding in some way, but they also want work to be part of a holistic life experience. But there are other areas in which this energy is showing up. That is going to be uniquely your own, but I wanted to invite you to consider, to contemplate more deeply some of the very powerful significance of this time for you. Because this integration of what the great immersion is for you and how it's going to change your life, you're going to start to feel the urgency grow more and more as we start moving patiently towards the end of the year. And it is going to accelerate once Mars enters the sign of Scorpio, because that is an energy of truth, an energy of honesty, even when it's hard. It's going to those places that are forbidden, that are taboo, that you want to deny are in you, but you know that they're there. And it's an energy, yes, of transformation, of change, of meaningful change, the type of change that comes when we embrace the truth, the type of change that comes when we embrace and prioritize our spiritual growth, our spiritual learning. We face up to where it is that we could have been better, but in being able to acknowledge where we could have been better, we free ourselves from the karma of those repercussions and instead can embrace something more consciously of our choosing. And where it is that we are embracing principles of love and wisdom, life is going to challenge us to make sure that we are embodying it through and through. But that is part of the work of this time. And part of the work of this week with Mars stepping into Scorpio, and this work is going to take us right to the end of the year. What I love about this week for us, well, look, what a powerful astrological time. Without a doubt, it is meaningful. I do love that Mars is stepping into Scorpio. I know that concentrates the energy of Mars. It can intensify the energy of Mars. That energy can be one of change as well. And sometimes it's not easy to figure out what we're going to do with it. However, we will, of course, find our way forward. One area of life for all of us is going to start to experience meaningful change, is going to ask for our truth and begin the process of integrating these very powerful spiritual lessons that have been at play, certainly since the beginning of 2020. And where it is that we are willing to be brave in the face of whatever truth may present itself, because sometimes the truth can be really hard. There's a reason they call it a bitter pill. Because when you face up to the truth, you also have to face up to the consequences of that, which means the truth of what isn't working in your life. When you accept that, then you also have to accept the power you have to change it. And so in a way, it can be very empowering. And I can tell you, as hard as it is to embrace that work can be very rewarding as well. And ultimately, you are moving into greater alignment with a depth of understanding into yourself, a depth of authenticity that can only come when we are willing to look at the truth of what we feel, the truth of what we want, and where it is that we align those desires with love and wisdom. Well, truly, we become a force of positive change that we experience in the lives of others, certainly in our sphere of influence, certainly, but within ourselves. We become a powerhouse that cannot be denied. Well, thank you so much for watching. What do you love about this week? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading you guys, and to prove it to you, here are some of my most recent favorite comments. Thank you to everybody who likes, who comments, who subscribes, who shares, who thumbs ups, who hits the notification bell. Thank you, each and every one of you. It means so much. And of course, if you want to know how all of these powerful celestial phenomenon are playing out for you in your sign, well, you can log on to NadiyaShahSuperstars.com, where with choose your membership rate as low as just $3 a month, you get expanded exclusive video scopes for each and every sign, each and every week for as low as just $3 a month. Higher tiers get you things like all access passes to future Synchronicity University events, consultations with me, and so much more. All of this in the Superstar space. I look forward to meeting you there. Mayan astrology is right around the corner. November 11th is the official launch date, and you can pre-order on Amazon now for just $6.99 and get $70 worth of gifts just for your pre-order. So what happens is you go onto the Amazon website, you place your pre-order, and then on November 11th, when the book is launched in English and in Spanish, well, you will get an instant copy, and also you will get gifts from us. Now, how you get the gifts though is when you place your pre-order in advance of November 11th, then you send us the receipt. Just send us something without any, information that gives anything away, which wouldn't be there anyways. But yeah, just let us know that you got this, and we will put you on a list to make sure that you get access to 2 of Nadiya's classes. One is a download that you will get on November 11th of her class that she did on the different Mayan signs, and you'll be able to join us live for a class in November on Mayan sign compatibility as well. So check it out. This is very much a labor of love, very much a space and place where I'm able to share something very near and dear to my heart. If you've watched me for a while, you know that I have called Mexico home for about 9 years now, and this is just one way to express the love I have for the land and the people. And so yes, check it out, Mayan astrology, and you can pre-order your copy now on Amazon. Link is in the description below, or check out synchronicitypublications.com. Synchronicity University, 1 week left to choose your tuition rate. Truly world-class, world-renowned speakers and teachers are coming to Synchronicity University. I'm so excited about this. So first, let me tell you about the incredible speaker series we have in November. This is the last batch of classes that is going to be taking place. And so I hope that you will join us, because really we have got big dog astrologers here. We have got the one and only April Elliott Kent, widely read, widely recognized, brilliant astrologer. I hope that you checked out my interview with her recently, because you'll get to see just how insightful she is. She's really one of the best out there. She's going to be teaching on eclipses in astrology. What a great topic to consider, how eclipses have played out in your chart. We are also going to have Nico, son of Celine, YouTube phenomenon, astrology superstar, Nico, son of Celine. He's going to be teaching on tapping into your gifts, looking at your chart to understand what your gifts are. We have Rachel Lang joining us as well, and she is the author of Modern Day Magic. And she also is going to be teaching on timing financial decisions. What a perfect topic for Mars and Scorpio, that sense of timing and strategy and moving towards wealth and redefining wealth. I'm really looking forward to that class. We have Louise Eddington, and she is going to be teaching on understanding your Venus star, your personal Venus star, and helping us to understand relationships in a whole new way. And we have Nicole Garceau. I'm so proud of her. She's doing so many incredible things in astrology right now, and she is going to be teaching developmental age method. It's a wonderful predictive method to understand major phases and phases of life as well. So I hope that you'll join us as low as just $5 a class for just another week at synchronicityuniversity.com. Link is in the description below. And of course, the one and only Melissa CYNOVA, world-renowned tarot expert, author of the Kitchen Table Tarot series. She is actually going to be teaching a 5-part series at synchronicityuniversity.com. This is so exciting. This really is like the expansion of the vision that I had for my school, to have somebody of her caliber come and teach tarot, to go through the cards, the major arcana, the minor arcana, the suits, to understand them with greater depth and greater understanding as only she can. She'll have you reading tarot very quickly in a whole new way and having you understand the cards with greater depth as well. I think it's going to be a fun class. Melissa has 7 planets in Sagittarius. You probably could tell by the interview that I did with her that is up on my YouTube channel. But yes, join us. This really is such a great rate to learn from really a world-class speaker, a world-class tarot teacher and expert like Melissa CYNOVA. So check it out. Just 1 week left to choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class, and a limited number of scholarships, partial and full scholarships are available as well. So visit synchronicityuniversity.com. Link is in the description below. Signed copies of my books with awesome gifts are available at synchronicitypublications.com for one more week only. And so just for another week, books are on offer that will be signed and shipped by me ASAP in the first days of November. I am in Canada. Shipping is super easy from here. It's when I'm in Mexico that shipping gets a little bit complicated, but from here, easy breezy. I have books on hand. They are going out. I'm going to the post office regularly these days. So check it out. Just in time for the holidays for you or for someone else as a gift. And it comes with all kinds of free gifts as well. The different books come with different gifts, but they will be shipped out by me, so you know you're going to get it in time for the holidays. Once the month is over, I am going to start to prepare things, start to wrap up to head back to Mexico for the winter months. And so I won't be back, so I won't be able to ship out more books. So I hope that you will check this out. If you know somebody who really likes my work, well, thank you. Give them a big hug from me. Or if you are somebody who likes my work, please accept a big hug from me as well. But yes, get signed copies of my books now at synchronicitypublications.com. And finally, you can get my take on your unique birth chart by checking out my partnership with Cosmogram. At Cosmogram, you go onto their website, you enter in your birth data, and within hours, you are sent a PDF digital copy of your chart along with my explanations of the different planetary placements there. If you go onto the Cosmogram website, you can actually see a sample report so you know exactly what it is that you are going to get. Thank you to everybody who has ordered this. Thank you for your trust. And I absolutely love sharing this with you. So yes, check out my partnership with Cosmogram. Link is in the description below. Thank you. Thank you so much again for being here. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really looking forward to this end of October with you, boy, with Mars in Scorpio. It is going to be quite the intense Halloween. I hope that you have a lot of fun, even though I know that I'm going to be back here for Halloween because next week starts on Halloween. Still, the preparation is part of the fun. So I hope that you're enjoying every single step of the way. Thank you again for watching. It'll be a great week. Enjoy.